Perfect.
It's 2 o'clock. Shall we start, everyone?
Yes.
Very good. So, welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining the afternoon session of the RI.Logistica, which is an event for logistics matter for research infrastructures. And my colleague Jürgen Larsen and I, Ute Gunzenheimer from the European Spallation Source, we will guide you through this afternoon. And for those of you who dialed in a little bit earlier, you saw a video because we didn't come up with this program ourselves, but we had the great support of a very, very motivated and engaged program committee. And some of the members you will meet in the panels today in the afternoon. And I would already now thank the organizations who basically allowed them to dedicate their time to that. And it was CERN, the EMBL, ESO, EUXFEL, Fusion for Energy ITER, CEOS, and DÖFDN. So thanks very much for all the support in the last months to come up with the program for this committee. And now we hand over to session number 3. Jürgen, what will they tell us about?
Well, first of all, also thank you to all the persons behind the company names or institutional names. It's been a pleasure to come this far. So thank you for that, and also the panelists who has been really eager and friendly in sharing their experience, so to speak. In this particular case, we will see the challenges we meet, potential solutions for that, and I won't spend more time on that, Ute. Let's just get started.
Crossing borders, managing customs and taxes. Patrick, over to you.
Yes, hello, good afternoon and welcome to everyone. I hope you had an enjoy lunch time. My name is Patrick Muffat. I'm working at CERN as a head for the logistics since 2006. And I'm pleased to introduce the session 3, which is for crossing border managing customs and taxes. We are all involved in the logistic workflow, facing daily issue and of managing customs and clearance. And we had already this morning some example of these situations. So during these sessions, we'll hear from a research institute and the European Commissions, and also a customs broker on the best way to adhere to the rules and regulation and how to find a solution to simplify the day-to-day problems. So we will hear first from Kitty Fritz Nielsen, Head of Procurement and Logistics and at European XFEL. So I'll let you the presentation.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I am going to see that I get the presentation going. Please let me know if you can see them.
Yes.
Oh, great.
It's perfect.
Perfect. So Technic has worked. Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you to Technic. But also, first of all, I would like to say a big thank you to the organizers for this amazing conference, and under those challenging conditions that we are all suffering under. Great work. Thank you. So now I am trying to add a little bit with my presentation to the topic, crossing borders, managing customs and taxes. As you can see, I have different procedures for temporary customs clearance as one topic, challenges for RIs, research institutions as a second, possible solutions, that's my favorite, as the third. Let me see if I can. Yep, it doesn't want to respond. Then I have to do it with the mouse. Okay, so we already had this topic before this morning, import and exports from or into the UK. A very challenging topics, I think, for all of us after the Brexit. As we heard also this morning, the goods have to be declared by customs. So they must be customs cleared. There are no more benefits for all the European partners as it used to be, meaning union goods when it comes to UK is not a subject anymore. The challenges that we face is that we are actually experiencing huge additional workloads due to the customs clearing processes that we now have to do for all the items and articles ordered either from the UK or going into the UK. And I think this is a really huge workload for all parties involved throughout the whole complex process chain. That means starting from the research institutions to the suppliers, to the carriers, to the customs authorities. The delivery times are not predictable anymore due to huge backlogs. We have just experienced that in the last few, I would say, weeks or even months by now. It's either at the border or at the transport hubs from the carriers, and of course also at the customs clearing offices. Significant loss resulting from this due to spoiled samples or also other perishable products that might be imported or exported. As we heard earlier before, we do send samples, either organic or inorganic, back and forth for experiments. This is our daily bread. And when those samples spoil, it actually could lead to like a collateral damage, because sometimes organizations have worked years on creating these samples. Or the other thing that is involved is that beam time is lost. That means the experiment cannot be done due to the fact that the samples are spoiled. That's really sad. The next topic I have is the temporary admission. We do have different tools that we can use for that. One of them is the so-called ATA Carnet, which is a really interesting tool. You can transport goods across several borders from country to country, and then either going back to the point of origin, or sometimes they also have to stay somewhere else. The challenges that we experienced is what happens if goods are damaged, if they are lost or in other ways altered, what to do about it. So up to now, we really have no solution. It is troublesome to get the goods back in once they're not in the same condition or shape or form as they were sent out with the ATA. It is time consuming, at least over here in Germany. We have to personally go to the Chamber of Commerce and apply for it. And yeah, that's sometimes not easy to do, because we all have full calendars. And so does the Chamber of Commerce. So you have to see to get an appointment to go there and get the ATA in your hand over there, in quintuplicate, not to forget. Then we have another process, which is the so-called inward or outward processing. This is also often used, at least from the research institutions. It does apply when non-union goods are imported or exported for the purpose of servicing, manufacturing, if they need to be repaired or in any other way altered with. The challenges there we face was that the administrative effort, so we call it the bureaucracy, is really huge. The supporting documents that the customs need for releasing those goods to send them out or even getting them back in is often very exhausting. A real difficulty is choosing the right or the correct HS code. I might get back into that a little later. Another question is, will the items come back in the same condition? You have to answer those questions to the customs before you send them out. The goods are returned using a different carrier and method. That is actually something that happened quite frequently, at least in our organization, that we send items to a research facility for experiments or also just for testing to verify the functionality. And it is tested there, or it was used there, and then it has to come back to us. Then somewhere along the line, it got missing that they should use the same carrier that we were using in the beginning, because we had to open the so-called outwarding process, and it should come back on the same way. So now they're using another carrier who doesn't know anything about the outward process that was already opened, and the items arrive at our institution, and then we have to bring them in using free circulation. That means we have to pay customs again on items that we may already have paid customs on, plus taxes. And to solve those issues is sometimes really difficult and very time consuming, and it involves so much bureaucracy, it's unbelievable. So we're coming to the next slide, special cases. We do have special cases also over here in Germany. That's why I used this example. We have a so-called exemption from customs duty for scientific use only. We have a special form that we have to fill out for that to apply. Of course, the research institutions must prove to the customs that those items can only be used for scientific research or will only be used, or in our case also were just produced for the scientific research use only. The challenges are that it depends on a constant monitoring of the goods by the research institutions and the customs authorities. That means any changes, either in location or changes to the products themselves, if it's a machine or if it's any other item, it must be reported to the customs immediately. The customs also send their auditors to us periodically, just to have a look at the location, see if the items are still physical existing at the locations that we have told them the items are, and also they look at the conditions of the goods. At XFEL, we did set up a special data bank for that. We created an access data bank where we have roughly 1,000 items right now that we constantly monitor, which is quite a lot. We also have all these items entered in our asset management system just to be on the safe side, to make sure we always see if, for instance, the items change rooms or location. As I wrote here, the failure to comply leads to immediate consequences. Usually that means that the goods will go into free circulation right away, and we have to pay the customs and the duty on it. And the customs, of course, has to be paid. The customs rate at the time the goods actually entered Germany. So even if maybe at time has changed and the item is now considered to be a zero duty item, but it was 4% before, you do have to pay the 4%. We have another nice exception. We have another nice case over here, customs duty-free import into Sweden. Thank you, Jürgen. I found that was a very interesting one. There is a permit that have to be applied for at the Swedish customs, and it needs, of course, also extensive documentation and data to prove that the case is used for scientific research 1 month prior to arrival. That's sporty. To be approved by the Swedish customs authorities. So here the challenges are that it is also only related to the scientific equipment and its spare parts. The permit is also for just one import. If you have multiple imports of the same kind, you have to apply for it again and again. So that means a high level of administration. I like to point out that this also is the case for the special exemption in Germany. It is only for one shipment. So here we have the issue that it's not usable for off-the-shelf products because there you usually have faster transport ways and you have no way to use 1 month prior. We can see here that ESS has used 39 permits already since 2018, and this has saved approximately €500,000, which is really not bad. And raw materials or equipment do not qualify as scientific goods, and they're not covered by this method. There we come to the next slide with some more examples. I called it a short glimpse into the daily life of a logistics person in a research facility. As you can see in the headline, goods or samples arrive with the wrong HS code. That's always the highlight. Now I put in parentheses, and if we are really unlucky, it involves dual use, and it's Friday. Now that's like jackpot, and the blood pressure is rising. So we have challenges here. First thing we have to look at is, are the goods perishable and are they cold? Is the carrier aware of it? How did the wrong HS code come together? Where was the mistake? Are the goods needed for beam time? Now that's the most pressing question here. When is the beam time scheduled? Then challenges. Custom office operation hours on Fridays are limited, usually at least in Germany, 3 o'clock, closed doors. So for dual use, the authorizations must be obtained on Friday afternoon, no chance. So in the worst case, the beam time is lost, and that can cost the research institution, at least in our case, roughly 200,000 Ks for the day. That's a big damage. It could even be more, because if you consider the preparation time, the people that might travel, the travel cost, and all the other items that add on to it, it's a big loss. Troublesome imports. We did experience some talking about raw materials, raw niobium that was bought in China. It was then transported to Italy, where it was cast into shape and further processed into a cavity. During the casting process, of course, the shaping and the forming, some of the material was lost. Then also from Italy, it was brought to France for further treatment and again, processing. And yeah, again, a certain amount of the material was lost. The challenges were that lost material was not traceable anymore. There was no way that somebody would sit underneath with a little shovel and a broom and try to collect it. And yeah, the carnet could not be used. So the material actually had to be cleared into free circulation. And the research facility paid a huge sum of money, in that case we, in duties and taxes. And I like to point out it's taxpayers' money that we are using. So here comes my favorite, the vision board for the future. No borders for science. Sounds great. Freedom, the firstborn of science. Thomas Jefferson said that many years ago in 1795. He was the 3rd US president. Now we have just thought, what can be done to make life easier for the research facility and the customs authorities when it comes to the global transport of goods? Would a possible free trade agreement covering the exchange of scientific research goods from raw materials to samples to machines and also knowledge be possible? And how could this be achieved? We are prepared to assist in any way possible, together with the EU and whoever wants to join, to create a think tank, just collecting ideas and looking for possible solutions in creating slim processes for both sides. Now that's the trigger point here. The ultimate goal should be to reduce the cost and the administration on both sides and consequently save taxpayers' money. So I'm saying, let us become more efficient in every aspect. The other question was, could a special design group of HS codes valid for scientific research goods only be a feasible possibility? As a research facility, we strongly believe that the setup of our own group of individual HS codes, mainly designed for our field of expertise or business, in cooperation with the scientific research industry maybe, and of course together with the EU, with the European Commission, could be a great tool of identification. Reducing possible mistakes for outgoing and incoming goods is one benefit. And again, the goal should be to reduce the costs on both sides and consequently save taxpayers' money. So my last slide. We are ready to work together. Thank you.
So thank you, Kitty. Perhaps you can stop the sharing?
Let me see. I'm sure I can.
Yeah, thank you very much. We had some very good examples on these presentations, and we have a few questions on it, and we can see that we are all, I think, confronted to the same problem, that it takes times, administrative work, sorry, and also money. So for research institute, I mean, could be perhaps the way to find the solutions to resolve all this delay and problems and things like this.
Absolutely.
So now we have a presentation from Fernando Pero de Pinac, who is the head of taxations and customs union unit, sorry, international relations, DG Tax UD at the European Commission. So, so Fernando, this is your time now. Oh, we cannot hear you. I think you are mute. Yes, okay.
All right, thank you. And good afternoon. First of all, to say I'm very pleased to be with you in a conference dedicated to facilitate trade in the area of research, which is a field to which I have to say myself, I haven't been directly exposed, but from which I hope to learn, and also on which already have seen a number of good ideas that may be worth reflecting upon. So I will take this presentation not only to share with you some elements of the framework in which we are operating within the EU and the international framework, but also following the discussion to see what elements of what we hear could be useful in terms of policy making, because from the European Commission point of view, as you know, we attach great importance to the research and development. Is critical for the competitiveness of Europe. And that's why here, when we have a number of ideas, I will then share on the screen, and I hope that it will work.
Yes, it works. It's fine. Thank you.
All right. Then I will see the complete. Right. The presentation focuses on first of all, what is the rationale of border and border controls and of customs? What is the international framework? What is the EU doing? How it works, I would say, in the customs area, of course. Some words about the Brexit and the UK, and also some insights into what may be the future with the necessary speculation. First, well, in the beginning, we could say almost there were borders and taxes. I think as these are unavoidable facts of life. They have been there since the beginning, practically, of civilized and regulated life. And this refers to both customs duties that have existed of different kinds, also of taxes that were perceived. The borders are very easy, a very easy way of controlling and of raising money. And this is shown by the fact, for instance, that for many countries in the world, especially in the developing countries, custom duties is one of the main sources of public revenue. And also borders are used for the controls of all kinds of different activities, commerce, transfers of currency, the respect of exclusive rights, and so on. Of course, the question can be posed that we are now not in the medieval ages or at the time of the Romans, but we are very well into the 21st century. And one would say, is it necessary to have all of this hassle as was mentioned before? Well, there are a number of reasons that still remain there. On the one hand, customs are needed for the protection of financial resources. Custom duties exist. They have been eliminated through many rounds of negotiations, but they still constitute a non-negligible source of revenue. Is very small in the case of the EU. The average custom duty is less than 2%, but nevertheless, all authorities are due to respect the application of the rules. Also, it is very important to protect unfair trading practices, for instance, anti-dumping. This is something that is controlled at the borders. Critically, for the protection of health and safety of the European Union as its citizens. This is what we call in the jargon, as many customs experts around know pretty well, the so-called prohibitions and restrictions. In the case of the EU, customs are due to control no fewer than 63 regulations with their respective annexes, implementing provisions, etc. We are talking about many thousands of pages. All of this unavoidably implies paperwork. Also, the protection of intellectual property rights. Well, if there is a patent or is a trademark, if they are not controlled at the borders, the protection may be effective only for those who manufacture locally. But what happens if the goods come from any country, far east, west, or north, or south? This would unavoidably then happen, and this wouldn't allow the legitimate owners to exercise their rights. In the EU, we have, in addition, as part of the missions of the customs, the objective of facilitating legitimate trade. And this is a point to which we give particular attention. Actually, my own unit, the main title is Trade Facilitation in relation with the neighboring countries. Moving now to the international framework, mainly it is the World Trade Organization and the World Customs Organization. In the WTO, the main instrument is the GATT, General Agreements on Tariffs and Trade, where there have been several, close to 10 liberalization rounds since the very beginning, 47, and which have reduced very significantly the duties, but the duties still exist. And they have also been developing quite a number of disciplines that have been growing in time. The agreements reached in the WTO at the end of the Uruguay round, which is a revised version of the GATT, the Customs Valuation Agreement, the Agreement on Rules of Origin, the Agriculture Agreement, Technical Barriers to Trade, Sanitary Phytosanitary Measures, Licensing Procedures, Trade-Related Intellectual Property Agreement, etc. So all of this has developed a body of trade that has essentially facilitated trade and enabled what we have seen. In fact, is despite all the duties and the procedures, is a surge in trade and a real globalization. And the most recently, there was a trade facilitation agreement reached in 2014, which tries to harmonize and simplify the procedures. In the World Customs Organization, we have a convention on the simplification of and harmonization of customs procedures, the revised Kyoto Convention, which is now being reviewed with a view to achieve both more effective but also more efficient controls, and therefore provide for greater simplification, as well as the Harmonized System Convention, which is the starting point for the application of customs duties around the world, without which the situation would be particularly complicated, the Temporary Admission Agreement Convention. And in the UN Economic Commission for Europe, the Convention on Transit TIR. In the case of the EU, the customs union was completed now over 50 years ago, and it is by far the most developed and integrated customs union in the world. Practically, we can say the only one which is fully complete, because many other customs unions are partial, they are exclusions. And in the case of the EU, it is based on the non-application of internal controls because of the existence of an internal market and a common external EU border, a common customs tariff. All of it implies that the level of integration within the EU is very significant. As, by the way, as the previous speaker has mentioned, you have seen in the case of the UK that there is stark difference. I wouldn't say night and day, but certainly day and I would say rather than dawn, dusk. The import regime is harmonized in the EU, but we still have a distinction between preferential treatment and non-preferential treatment. Non-preferential is in the case of the so-called WTO treatment, and most favored nation, and preferential in the multitude of free trade agreements that the EU has. Now, close to 2/3 of EU trade is carried out under preferential terms because of unilateral as well as conventional agreements that we have with many of the EU significant partners. However, as you know, for goods to benefit from duty-free treatment, it is necessary to respect the rules of origin, which is a particular complex bunch of rules. We have in the EU a harmonized customs regulation, which is the Union Customs Code, which entered into force now 5 years ago. And it entails highly harmonized procedures, common IT systems, which are now being further developed and integrated, a system of single window, and a practically paperless system that we want even to become more paperless insofar as there are still some operations that require the issuance of paper, for instance, the origin certificates. And we have the Common Transit Convention that applies not only in the EU, but also to other countries in the neighborhood, from Turkey or Serbia, North Macedonia, or in particular the UK, and of course Switzerland, for instance. Now, the situation with the UK was particularly complex. You know that it was possible to reach an agreement a few days before the end of the year on a new partnership and cooperation agreement, which is a almost classical enhanced free trade agreement, which provides for no customs duties to be applied for originating products. But this duty-free treatment doesn't exempt in any way from the full application of the EU import procedures and formalities. Full application, meaning customs declarations, VAT declarations, and payment, unless there is a deferral system and deferral of declarations. They need to lodge entry or exit summary declarations for security purposes, plus application of ordinary customs controls, the application of all the regulations, all the 63 different regulations I mentioned, the application of controls, because there is still risk assessment being done by the customs, and they may do random checks at the border. There is a need to provide proofs of origin to benefit from duty-free treatment. And as positive element is that the UK is in the Common Transit Convention, although this is of limited effect. It's essentially for transit using the so-called land bridge between Ireland and the continent. A word on the future evolution of relations with the UK. Well, have to say that without convergence, there is an unlikely reduction of controls and formalities. This needs to be very clearly understood by everyone. And this implies that there are no, if you like, third ways to try to create a new system to facilitate trade different from the system that we have in the EU. This, I think, is not on the agenda. What about the future? Some elements I would like to share with you. First, a reference to the Union Customs Code that refers to the need to maintain a proper balance between customs controls and facilitation of legitimate trade. So again, we'll also need to take into account not only the need to ensure the protection of the interest inside the border, but also that it is important to ensure the free flow of trade, and keeping in mind that whilst there are very large companies that can afford advice and logistic systems, and it is not the case, especially for small, medium-sized enterprises, as some of you have mentioned and faced. So this is an element which is of particular importance and concern to us. We need, when we regulate, we need to keep in mind the impact that this will have on the users. The EU trade policy is based on what is called an open strategic autonomy, in the sense that the trade policy will always be in support of the general wider EU geopolitical interests, including sustainable development. So it's open, but on the other hand, it has to protect the overall interests. Again, we go back to the idea of balance. The Union Customs Code also provides for the possible application of simplifications in the implementation of customs legislation that can be introduced by member states. Finally, what could we see is what is the future in the area of customs. Of course, there is a lot of work done within the Commission and our Directorate General to foresee what may be the evolution of customs. Are we going towards more virtual customs, so invisible borders? I think what we can say with certainty is that there is going to be greater reliance on artificial intelligence, on data analysis, and also a shift of the responsibilities towards the economic operators, and less on ex-ante control, relying more and more on the so-called authorized economic operators, that they themselves should ensure the compliance with the rules. So all in all, we can say that these regulations and their complexity, as any regulations in our world, is not going to diminish. However, what we will try to do is to reduce the impact, ensure that they are compatible and more easy, user-friendly, and used without papers and with simplified procedures. It is a constant task. And as I said at the very beginning, we look forward to any additional inputs, insights, and will be most willing to maintain a dialogue with the research community to see how we could take into account their concerns. So thank you very much for your attention.
So thank you very much, Fernando. I hope your explanation could give some answer to the audience. And don't forget that there is still the link question and answer for the end of the presentations for everyone. Okay, now I think this is the last presentations, which is it's a joint presentation, I suppose, from Thomas Wine and Paul Dehige, Head of Customs and VAT at Gerlach Customs. It's a customs broker, huh, Gerlach? Is it right? Yes.
That is correct. You can already hear me?
Yes. Perfectly.
Perfect. So next thing I will try to do is to share my screen. Hold on. One second.
It seems we've lost Thomas, right?
Yes.
He pushed the wrong button.
Then I will share my screen then.
I'll get him back in.
Adapt and conquer, Paul.
Yeah, we have the presentation.
Yeah, I
I'm
cannot
back
start.
as well. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. Paul, I think I would start with the first slides.
Okay, then I have to go up.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. So thank you everybody for inviting us. My name is Thomas Weins. I'm working, I need to start my video. I'm very sorry. I'm working for Gerlach. What is Gerlach? Gerlach is what we would call the biggest independent neutral customs broker in Europe. We are part of the DPDHL group. And hence today, Paul and myself would like to discuss a little bit more in detail as well about the Brexit, because what we have seen in the past month was very challenging for us as a customs broker. You know, many of our customers are industry customers, other customers are carriers, and hence we have basically been confronted with the full beauty of the so-called Brexit. So Paul, if you could go to the next slide. You see the title is Free Trade Between European Union and UK with a question mark. And what I would like to talk about, Paul, if we can move on to the next slide, is what was actually intended. Paul?
Yeah.
Next slide, please. Can the others see the second slide?
No, we saw just the first slide. Brexit, free trade between EU and UK.
Oh,
Exactly.
at my side, it is,
Yes.
it is running. Does it
Okay.
work now? Does it work?
It's still the first slide.
Then we do it this way. Maybe this works.
No, still the
Still
first.
the first
Yes.
one.
Yes.
Wow. On
I
my
can
side,
take over if you wish.
Maybe.
Indeed, we wanted to offer to run it from ESS, but Thomas, if you have it, what would you prefer?
I have it as well. I can share my screen, but then Paul needs to stop.
okay, then
So Paul, you have to.
I have to stop.
Yes, stop on the bottom.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
So you should see my screen now, right?
Not yet. Yes.
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 Perfect. So what was actually intended by the UK government? I mean, that is a very interesting question. The UK, especially Boris Johnson, most likely had a vision. The vision was the famous quote, "Take back control." And as well, if we look at history, of course, in mind of UK citizens, most likely is as well a global Britain, a global Britain that can sign major trade deals. Of course, the intent is always prosperity and borderless trade. So, I mean, that was from the beginning, I believe, one element why people have voted for the Brexit. I mean, normally, if you look at the world and the economy, what is happening is that countries come from, so to say, economic separation, and they intend to sign a free trade agreement. That is different here. Here, this is a very unique historic decision where a country comes actually from a situation to benefit from free trade and voluntarily votes for a separation. And there's a nice quote from the CEO of DPDHL that he made already some years ago, Frank Appel. History has proven that no country in the world has ever been successful economically due to protectionism. I think that is quite an interesting point of view. And the key question, of course, is how will that develop? in future. But what is it so far? I mean, if we look at the current situation, especially the borders, Calais-Dover, for example, the exit of the European single market and, of course, the exit of the EU customs union have, as we have heard before, increased bureaucratic burdens, right? Because now for each good that is crossing the borders, you are confronted with something called customs formalities, quite complex, as you have already experienced in the past. What did we see so far? I mean, what we still see is delays. So it is not as easy as it was some month ago to bring something towards UK or from UK back to Europe. But what we have not been faced with is congestion. You should see that this nice picture at the upper right of this slide. I mean, the picture was taken actually before the Brexit, because many companies were afraid that there would be a lot of congestion, but it did not happen. Congestion until today we have not seen. Why is that? One of the main reasons, in my point of view, is at the moment we see less trade between UK and Europe and vice versa. I mean, when you read some statistics, you can see that, you know, at the moment there's around 30% less trade that is actually happening, and hence there's no congestion. Still, we have delays because now it takes longer due to the customs formalities that you need to do to bring the goods back and forth. Nevertheless, this all will cost money. I mean, people need to do a customs declaration, hence people need to be paid. But what we have seen as well is there are very limited customs controls in UK yet. So this will most likely come in future, but for the time being, it is quite limited. Nevertheless, the UK government is, of course, envisioning a fully automated customs process in future. Now, if we look a little bit into the future, I would like to give maybe an outlook about where could this actually going to develop, right? And if you read the free trade agreement that there exists between the EU and the UK, it offers, of course, something called free trade. So at the beginning of the year, many companies called me and said, yeah, but we have a free trade agreement now. Why is it still that complicated? Because at that time, people have not yet understood what this means. Free trade and not paying, for example, import duties is only possible if certain, requirements are met, right? So you cannot simply benefit from it. You need to meet certain requirements. And reading the free trade agreement that was actually signed, it is actually quite interesting to see how that was phrased. So that's why I'm coming up here with two potential implications that might come in future. It's my personal estimate, right? So it's not written in stone. As long as the UK government will stay close to the EU regulation, this will enable them to benefit from the free trade. Nevertheless, and that is written in that free trade agreement, if the UK aims to sign own trade deals, which is for sure their intent, and hence they might want to deviate from the EU regulation, the EU has, built in a certain mechanism that will enable the European Union to come up with, for example, import duties, right? So in easy words, that means as long as the UK will stay close according to the EU regulation, then free trade will still be possible. But if the UK will go in their own way and, bring up their own regulation, which is not in line with the European one, then this free trade agreement will partly, step by step, not as applicable anymore. And, import taxes will be built up by the European Union. So here, this is quite a interesting position now for Boris Johnson for the next years, because, yeah, he wants to have global Britain and so on, and he wants to do things differently than the European Union. But while doing that, it will increase the cost for so far his biggest trading partner, which is the European Union so far. And I'm coming back to my initial statement. At the moment, we already see less trade, right, in the trade statistics between the two countries or regions. And that might give you an outlook how this will develop in future. With that having said, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Paul. Paul, you can hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank
Perfect.
you, Thomas.
I'll hand over to you. And if I need to switch to the next slide, please let me know.
Yeah. I took the Brexit as a starting point here because of the issues you are raising at the moment. So the effect on temporary admission, meaning temporary licenses for certain activities you are doing. So now the UK is a third country. So the consequence of that, when shipping into the EU, customs obligations are due. You have to prepare export declarations from the UK, import declarations, vice versa. You have to pay import duties if the origin is not UK, and you have to pay import VAT in the EU as well. Next slide, please. Thomas? Thomas?
I switched the slide, so.
Yeah, okay, thank you. But how can we decrease the administrative burden you are facing at the moment, and a lot of companies are doing? The option one, looking at your products and the way you are doing business, is using the ATO Connect, which we have heard before. And the second option, or one of the other options, is option two, using a license for temporary importation. Next one, please. The ATA Carnet, this is a specimen of ATA Carnet. Next one. What are the pros when using the ATA Carnet, the import activities using on one document for the certain products mentioned in that document? Re-export activities you can do on the same document. The ATA Carnet is globally valid in 50 countries plus 27 EU member states, actually 26. Import in the EU in one member state, re-export may take place in other member states. So when you entering the EU in the Netherlands, you may re-export through Sweden or in other countries. The validity is 2 years of this document, and then you have to hand it over back to the Chamber of Commerce or close as a closed document. What are the cons on this type of document? It is a very huge and thick document, multiple sub-documents. You have the green ones, the blue, white, and pink pages. And what happens a lot is that you have to pay a guarantee to the Chamber of Commerce when issuing the document. The identity of the products is only for the instrument mentioned in that document or in the list attached to the document. It is not possible to send equivalent products. For example, when one of the products is broken and you have to send an equivalent product, the same product, that same product must be mentioned on a new ATA Carnet. It is also possible when the identity of the product cannot be found by customs, then it is possible that customs will add a seal on that product, and you have to take care that that seal will not be broken. So when you use it for testing purposes, that's very hard. When you lose the ATA Carnet, you can face penalties, and you can lose the placed guarantee of the document. Next slide. As a solution, the second solution is the temporary import license, and which is just a customs cross-border decision. As an example, you will ask for such a license in Sweden as a cross-border license for multiple products not having entered the EU already, or they will enter today or something. You can have everything cross-border, valid in Sweden, valid in the Netherlands, etc., etc. Next one, please. What are the pros on this type of temporary admission? The license is cross-border. It will be obtained in one EU member state only. So if you obtain it in Sweden, it is valid in all the other member states. You can have multiple items in one license, so a list of products. So let's say 5,000 items with their HS code and value. A single item for customs handling is possible. So you have a license for 5,000 items, and one license is coming. One item is coming in. You make a reference to your license. The import-export activity using one document only. For re-export or re-importation, the activity using the same. And it is valid in 26 EU member states. Using one single license is possible. And most important, if a product is broken, you can send an equivalent product from outside the EU into the EU using the same license. The validity, it is as long as the license is valid. So most of the time, the licenses are valid for 3 to 5 years. What are the cons? So only valid at re-import, export, or re-export EU. You have to keep a register, as mentioned in the first presentation already. You have to keep a register of all items in the license. But I've learned that you have an access database already. The identity, all instruments mentioned in the license must be, it must be possible to identify those instruments. It is also possible that customs will ask for a guarantee if you do not have AEO status. Next one, please. Conclusion. So the exit of the EU single market and the subsequent exit of the EU customs union have increased bureaucratic burdens due to customs formalities, and use of simplified temporary admission will increase because of the Brexit. Beside these options, I've mentioned the ATA and temporary license. It is also possible that you enter into discussion with the EU committee because you have an EU organization or funded by the EU to get the same status as the UNHCR, so the health organization. If products are coming in for this organization, in most cases, it is always free of import duties. Later on, I would like to discuss if necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it from our side for the time being.
So thank you very much to Paul and Thomas. Now we have a few questions or comments. The first one is dual use is a big issue right now and will challenge us more and more in the future for both import and export. Yeah, this is true. We are also facing this here at CERN. It's quite long to have a license, and I think, in my opinion, the conflict all around the world is not going on the right way, and it will become more complicated and more complicated. So I don't know if there is comments of the panelists about this.
not easy to make any comments about the dual use at this point because, like you said, war is increasing worldwide, unfortunately, and therefore I believe the list of items might become even bigger and the list of countries involved will get longer, and it is a challenge.
Yeah, and especially in research and institute, because I mean, sometimes it's quite urgent to send PCs to replace for something, but we are not on the same way as industrial, so it makes us complicated. Yeah.
And it would be great to get more, exemptions in this area as well. I don't know if we have somebody in the panel who is actually dealing with that. I think we probably don't.
With exemptions, you mean?
Yeah, well, the exemptions when it comes to dual use, because I can understand Patrick, also us, we are a laser facility, laser already. Automatically implicates the issues of dual use, whether they're used for friendly action or other actions, and it could complicate things a lot.
No, there are no exemptions for example, for laser materials when it is used in the private sector. In the military sector, of course, there are, but also these organizations have to fill out forms before they can ship those products to certain areas.
Exactly.
It's also very complicated to explain this to our user. We are 10,000 of people here able to send the cargo all around the world. So sometimes it's very difficult to know if this product is dual use or not. And also it takes time to have this export license. Depends on the country, depends on the components. So it delays also sometimes.
Do you have ECCN specialist in the house?
Yeah, we have, yes.
Okay.
We have. And we have also LGO and LGE, so general license for some products, which is valid for 1 year or 2 years, I can't remember exactly, for specific components. Yes,
okay.
It's possible to have this in Switzerland. I don't know about the EU, to be honest.
Okay. When I look at the item list, you mentioned in the first, Kitty, you mentioned in the first presentation the HS classifications.
Yes.
And that mistakes are made.
Yep.
Have that list ever been, overlooked by a third party who is specialized in classification?
What do you mean by a third party?
You have your own classification specialist?
Now we do, but he just started. So before it was more or less up to the people in procurement or in warehouse, or even to the scientists to find out what is the correct HS code. But to be very honest, we involved customs officers as well as brokers, and they were sometimes clueless. So I think they are not as, how do you say, representable to some of the items that we use in scientific research as maybe they could be. After all, I think they're mainly designed for the industry.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, I worked for Applied Biosystems there. We had the same issue, especially research equipment for DNA, RNA. Most of them were in chapter 19. But sometimes customs say, no, it's not there, it must be in 84 or something. And then you have to debate and say, okay, it is for medical use, or it is for research, or that kind of things. But you need to have specification and the knowledge. So we had teams together studying the product and taking care that we had the correct HS code classification. But if you have doubts on that, do you use BTI?
Doesn't really ring a bell right now. What is BTI?
Binded tariff information.
Okay, we have a special design customs page, and there we can have a look at it and we can search, of course. Nevertheless, we do experience a lot of difficulties with that. And from my point of view, I just have to say, the majority of our people dealing with these issues, we are, yeah, they are scientists. We are, of course, administrators. Not everybody is a trained customs specialist. And we are dealing with public money. And
Yeah.
to hire extra people just to do that with public money is also another issue. We are talking about a budget that we receive, and we have to see that we can actually manage with this budget and run our facility with the budget that is given to us. So we don't really have a lot of extra spending money for such additional staffs. You have to understand.
Yeah. Clear. So what I also mentioned was the status of your institute. Has there been any conversations with DG Taxit or the other parts of the EU committee to talk over the status and to get it the same as the UNHCR, so the health organization?
You know, referring to our institution, or to be very honest, not yet, but we are in the process of starting this. That's why I was hoping this event is a very good tool to find solutions and to see what can be done. I'm not 100% sure if we fully apply to these to the rules that apply to this process. I cannot really say right now. I know CERN has a different status than we do. We are in a different, we are in a different status again.
Yeah. I just confirmed that we are an international organizations and that we are exempted of duties and taxes. We are like a port franc, I mean, here in Geneva. So everything we are importing is duties and taxes free. But of course, when it goes outside of CERN, I mean, we have to do export, and then the final destinations, they have to pay duties and taxes because it's coming back on the common market. So, we are exempted of duties and import taxes, which is easier for us to bring goods to CERN. I think there is because the time is running, so there is a question to Fernando. Is it possible to get some changes within the current rules to give RI some easier process in place?
Right. Thank you. And this relates also to the question where there may be the initiative of no borders for science. The procedures as they are apply across the board, the customs procedures. And the only differences that may exist is because some of them are exempt from customs duties because they are zero duty products, maybe because they come from preferential countries. And the differences also relate to whether or not a product is controlled, because it is a high-risk product or low-risk product. But it is what the customs do in terms of risk assessment to carry out their own verifications and controls. Normally in the research area, as some of you have mentioned, there are many products which are dual-use goods. Some of them, especially in the nuclear area, they are all highly controlled and regulated. So all of them are subject to a specific, or many of them are subject to specific regulations. But if what you refer to is to dual use, because it's a specific regulation in the EU, which is actually, this is run by our colleagues from the Directorate General for Trade. What we do in the European Union is to mirror the regulations that exist in the 4 export control regimes. We incorporate that into the EU legislation. So it is an international regime. The only thing that we do within the EU is to have a harmonized approach across the EU. in that respect, I wouldn't see many at the moment big scope for simplification of the procedures, insofar as, of course, there are concerns as to where sensitive technologies or products are going to end up. I think this is a fact of security. With respect to the customs procedures, I think that the procedures apply normally across the board for all the products. But there are some initiatives that have been taken in the World Trade Organization. We support also in the customs world. For instance, with respect to the information technology agreement, IT products, but they relate essentially to the reduction or elimination of duties. A new initiative is now being taken in the WTO for health products, particularly relevant now in the context of COVID. And there have been new experiences in the context of the COVID to try to create green channels and to facilitate the procedures and the movement of goods. If what you may be considering is something like alleged procedures for certain products, I think all of this requires in-depth examination. It's difficult to give you an off-the-cuff reply, but I think in itself, we are aware that in some areas there may be difficulty, especially for entities that operate because and the IT community is not necessarily a trading community. You need to import and export, you need to move the goods, but it is not your business. Your business is to do research. Yes. And that's why this implies additional costs. So there is a particular element together with, of course, the special importance of your sector for competitiveness. So this is something I would say is worth examining. This is something that could be done from the side of the Commission. Actually, there are several services. We have TaxUD, of course, we have DG Trade, but also DG Grow, Research and Development and Joint Research Center. There, the research community will also be interested. So I think this is, I would say on this, worth examining.
Okay, thank you. So the time is running. I don't know, Jürgen, if I have time for another questions, which is again for Fernando.
If it's for Fernando, please go. We have 3 minutes left.
Okay. So I have a question from Elliot. Temporary import and export of goods, in brackets, in our case, cryogenic dry shipper, seems not to unified across different EU countries from the UK. Is this a fair assessment of the situation? Is this likely to change?
Well, thanks for the question. I've given some elements of reply in the chat. The procedures for temporary admission are fairly harmonized in the EU, not only the Union Customs Code, but the so-called delegated act of the code. And actually, normally they should apply the same rules. And the only differences that should exist, in principle, refer, for instance, to the models of authorizations. There may be some differences. Some member states may ask more information on the identification of the goods than others. So it's basically this. So in principle, there should be no differential treatment. This being said, there is not a single customs authority in the EU, and it wouldn't be the first case where the application of the rules may differ. That's why if there was anything significant in terms of how the rules are applied, we would be willing to look into that because rules should be applied in a harmonized way. And if I may, there was a question in the chat about the ATA carnet, where they're going to be digitalized. And also I replied mentioning that there is an initiative that has already been launched in the International Chamber of Commerce. And there is a pilot project that has been launched to digitalize with, for the moment, 7 countries that have been selected to participate. Amongst them, 2 member states, Belgium and Germany. Others are UK, China, or the US, for instance.
Okay, thank you. So I think this is the end of the session, or do you still have?
Yeah, we've been running out of time. So that was a very informative session. So thank you very much, everyone, for contributing to it and actively asking questions. And as for all the other sessions, we'll make the slides available because there was such a dense information that we obviously want to share with everyone. So now we have a break, Jürgen, and then it will be your turn, but it will not be your turn alone, because that is really something where we want to involve the audience, right?
Absolutely.
In 15 minutes time. So please stay in this link. We will continue in the same link in 15 minutes at 3:30. We will continue to the next session. It's your turn to move, and we'll keep you busy. So thank you very much to all the panelists, and I'm looking forward to seeing you tonight then during the dinner. Thanks very much.
Yes, thank you very much. See you tonight.